Hey, Jordan here. It's a new year almost. I think a lot of people were looking for jobs come January. I found that there's a lot of turnover when it comes to the new year. I think maybe part of people's new year resolution is to go and make more money. And for devs or people in tech, one of the ways for them to get a pay pay raise most quickly is actually to change jobs. So just thinking about that and thinking of my time as a dev, I started thinking about, like technical interviews and whiteboarding, coding interviews. I'm in the camp where I don't like whiteboards. Um, but on the other hand, I don't like take home projects. So I've done a couple of take home projects for companies where they're saying take a weekend and develop this thing. And I remember I did one once for this company in Berlin, and I took the entire weekend. I locked away into my room. I did the coding thing. I had to create. I don't remember what it was, but it was like with Java and web services, and you had to have a UI that worked, and I did it. And when I sent my work in, I did not get a response until I had to send an email to get a response. And then the response was like, oh, you didn't pass. I'm like, do you have any feedback? There's no feedback. It's super hard to do, spend your entire weekend, for some people, an entire week to do something and then not get any feedback. It is very, very discouraging. So after that, I decided I'm not doing it anymore because I wanted to go out and have fun that weekend, and I took my time to basically do that coding exercise. So I was not happy that I did not get any feedback. I think I was more unhappy not getting the feedback than the fact that I actually didn't pass. Whiteboarding though, I don't like it because of the intense pressure that's on you. You have to really think quickly on your feet, and for me, when I get panic is when that time is going down, right? So when you see you have like less than half the time, I'm the type of person that gets like super panicked, and I start I'll be like, oh my god, I'm gonna run out of time. But yeah, I still prefer technical whiteboard interview, or on the computer interview, than a take home, because I find that at least at the end you have an idea how well you did, and you don't have that weight. So why do I do them? And I'm going to speak about why I do technical interviews, even when I'm not necessarily seeking a technical role, or why I occasionally accept technical interviews or whiteboarding interviews. Um, One, I think as a developer at heart, I spent most of my career, I love solving problems. So when I get the opportunity to solve a problem, depending on my mood or what my calendar is, I sometimes decide that okay, I'm gonna take this interview. I'm gonna do it just because I have time. So you could say maybe I'm bored, but I do take coding interviews um, just because just because I have the time, I have the availability, and I said, why not, right? This may not seem like a good reason for you. It's totally personal for me. You could have better use of your time, but I do find it keeps me sharp. It keeps me on my toes. To just go in and do a whiteboard or coding interview. It definitely keeps me sharper than I would be. Two, this is super weird, but when I finished university, I went to University of the West Indies. I barely scraped through that analysis of algorithms class. Oh my god, with Dr. Kaur. I barely scraped through that class. I just tax queues, etc. I've like dynamic programming. What was it in that one? I don't remember, but I barely scraped through. And I found that it was coding interviews and practicing for them that actually got me looking more deeply into data structures, their efficiency, etc. Why use a list? Why use a set? Those things. Like I know why on some level before, but in terms of efficiency, notations, some of those things are not valid in real life. You're not going to need to know that. But I found myself in some situations choosing a data structure based on what I know about what it does, and I learned that by practicing or doing Codilities or whiteboard interviews, etc. Right? And I found it a great way to learn things that you did not necessarily learn in school. I've had interviews where they ask questions, and let's say it's a quick Java questions or principles of OOP or whatever it is that I had to prep for. And I actually learned things like just, browsing something. I'm like, And for me, let's say I have to go back to Java development or I'm going to Java development. It would be, I would have to study. I definitely have to study. But I'm sure by studying, I would learn a lot more about the new features that came out and that came out recently. I do personal projects on my own, like nothing big, nothing grand. And I don't have a mindset that I'll never do this, I'll never do that job. I'll never go back to development, etc. I probably just don't see I've not been approached by the right team or product that I feel super earnest about jumping on. And because of this, depending on how I'm approached, so let's say the company or the product, I decide that, let me see if this is a dream team. I don't believe, people say they don't believe in leaving money on the table. I also don't believe in, leaving opportunities on the table. That doesn't mean if you message me and say, hey, I have a super great product. It's going to change the world. We need some people to, work for free until this goes to an IPO or anything. I'm interested. I'm not. I got bills to pay. But, if the right company, for the right company and the right team, the right referral, I will go and do the interview, the technical interview. And especially for some companies, the process is grueling, yes. But I think it also sets the standard for what other processes will look like, and you're able to walk through them like seamlessly. Like I've done processes with, like top companies that you say you have to practice, and it makes walking into other processes so easily. Like you don't have to study. You just go through, you do it, and then that doesn't mean you're gonna pass, right? Because the company may have other requirements outside of coding or whiteboarding, but it does give you a leg up. For example, in my first job I was in for almost 7 years, etc. I didn't have to do a coding interview at all. So when I was being recruited for the overseas job and I had to do a Codility, it's the first time I'm seeing this concept about, coding online and having a Codility, and then it runs a test and then you pass or you fail, etc. I'm like, what the heck? I had to go and study my ass off. I had to learn the platform. I had to learn, about how to optimize my loops, etc. And you can't use certain packages that you're potentially used. Let's say you use string utils for everything. That's not in Codility when I used it. So it does help for, when you get to see what a more complex process is, so that you can adapt or have your expectations set. I follow Emma Bostian on Twitter, and I'm not sure if she said it in a video or it was in one of her newsletters, when she mentioned that in one of her interviews she thought it was going to be a talk, it's a simple talk, and when she went in they started asking complex questions, and she felt so bad at the end that she felt like she wanted to cry. And you don't want to feel like that. So I think it's good to have an idea of what processes could be like, so that you are prepared. If that's the life you want to live, like be a developer, continue developing. And let's speak about developing a little bit more, because I find the interview processes for development seem to be a little bit more complex nowadays. And I know we're trying to get them to make it easier, you know, and I'm here telling you that if you practice, you'll know what the art or process is. But really and truly, I don't think the processes are going to change anytime soon. Why? Because there has to be a distinguishing way for companies to choose how they want to select their developers, and I think it's up to them. For me, it's not here nor there. If that's their choice, and if you want to go through it because the reward is good, it's up to them, and I have absolutely no issue with that. So while companies are refining their process, I still don't think it's going to be easier. And there are people who have different strengths, right? So there are people like me who don't want to take a week doing a challenge. I don't want to waste my time that much. And there are people who rather do whiteboarding. There are persons who rather get asked questions verbally. What is a string? What's the difference? What's the difference between a set and a list? Or tell me about a time you solved a production issue by yourself. Tell me about a time that you had to organize your team to solve a particular issue. Tell me about the time when the server went down and you alone you were on call, or whatever it is. There are people who prefer those approaches. So I would not want to say that I would want whiteboard interviews to go away, because I think their strengths, each person have different strengths. But it definitely takes work. And even though I'm not developing actively, I still do these interviews just because I like being prepared. So yeah, that's me. That's really why what I think about technical interviews, whiteboarding versus take-home projects, which as I told you, I dislike them, and also why I still do them. I just like to stay sharp. Once in a while, I like to code something, and I like to go into an interview and see what problem they have and see if I can solve it without any preparation. And it keeps my mind sharp. Again, thanks for watching. Not sure what my next video will be about. If you want me to talk about something in particular, let me know.